He said it like I was some teenager causing a scene. "You're just too much drama, Grace. You always have been." Then he picked up his phone and kept scrolling like I hadn't just asked why he and my daughter had been using my credit card for the last 4 months. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply stood up, walked to the guest room, and closed the door behind me. That night, I made a quiet promise to myself. If I was too much drama, then I'd give them some they wouldn't forget. It had started innocently, as it always does. A bad fall, a fractured hip, and a long rehab meant I couldn't be alone for a while. Ella, my only daughter, offered to take me in. "Just until you're back on your feet, Mum. We'll be glad to have you." I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. Their house wasn't big, but they cleared the guest room, added a recliner, even left a vase of fresh flowers. At first it felt warm. Ella brought me tea in the mornings, and Sean, the son-in-law, offered to pick up my prescriptions. He called me Ma once or twice, in that performative, over-friendly tone he used on waitresses. But that warmth cooled quickly. By the second week, Ella started using phrases like household harmony and keeping the energy balanced. It was her way of saying, "Don't make waves." The waves, apparently, were me watching TV with the volume up past 9 p.m., or cooking something that smelled too strong. One afternoon, she asked me not to boil eggs because Sean has a sensitive nose. So I stopped boiling eggs. Then it was the fridge space. My yogurt took up too much room. My tea tins weren't aesthetic. One evening, I reached for my knitting basket and found it missing. She'd reorganized the closet and hadn't thought to mention it. I swallowed all of it. The little humiliations, the new rules, the subtle reminders that I wasn't in my home. Because that's what mothers do, right? We keep the peace. We don't become a burden. But even then, something felt off. I noticed my bank balance dipping. Not drastically, just enough to make me wonder. A charge for groceries I never bought. A charge for a meal kit I'd never tasted. $129.99 to a home fitness app. I don't even own a smartphone. At first I thought it was fraud. I called the bank. They confirmed it was my card, the one I'd given Ella once, months ago, to pick up a prescription, just in case. When I asked her, gently, sitting on the edge of her pristine sofa, she blinked like I'd asked something rude. "Oh," she said. "That? I thought you said we could use it for household stuff. Sean pays most of the bills, Mum. You're living here rent-free." Rent-free. I said nothing, just nodded and went back to the guest room. That night, I opened the old wooden box where I kept the things that still felt like mine. Paul's wedding band, my mother's rosary, a faded photo of Ella as a toddler eating spaghetti with her hands. The next day, I asked Sean directly. We were in the kitchen. He was pouring himself a protein shake. "Sean," I said, "can we talk about the credit card?" He didn't look at me. "What about it?" "I noticed some charges. I wasn't sure if—" "God, Grace," he sighed, setting the blender lid down a little too hard. "Why does everything have to be drama with you?" My voice caught. You've always got a problem. Always a tone. We're doing you a favor, and now you're accusing us of theft." "I didn't say that." "Sure feels like it." He shook his head. "You know what? Maybe we should have thought twice before moving in too much drama under our roof." I didn't finish the conversation. I didn't even finish my coffee. I turned, walked down the hallway, and closed my door behind me. By nightfall, I'd already sent the first email to Walter, my husband's old friend, a lawyer. I told him I had some questions. "About rights," I said, "and locks." Walter responded within hours. Grace, he wrote, if you're emailing me, I assume something's gone sideways. Come by tomorrow. Bring any documents you've got. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. No, that had passed. What kept me awake was the way Sean had said it. Like I was a television set, left on too loud. Too much drama. Not Mum, not even Mrs. Halpin, just a problem with a name. In the morning, I made my bed the way Paul used to like it. Tight corners, blanket folded back, pillow fluffed. I brushed my hair, applied lipstick with a steady hand, and wore the coat with the stitched hem that Ella had once called old-fashioned. I packed my purse with care, my bank card, my ID, and the notarized papers from when Paul and I bought our apartment in 1987. We'd rented it out after he passed, never sold it. A backup plan, he called it. You never know who your daughter might marry, he'd joked. I used to scold him for that line. Now I wasn't so sure he was wrong. Walter's office smelled like old carpet and eucalyptus cough drops. He wore the same brown cardigan I remembered from Paul's funeral. You look ready to fight, he said, smiling. I'm ready to leave, I answered. We sat at his desk while I explained, slowly, carefully, everything. The fall, the rehab, the warm welcome that chilled too fast, the credit card, the word drama. Walter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, You still own the apartment, clear and clean. And as far as I can tell, you've been more than generous. He tapped the deed. You want to move back? I hesitated. It's been rented all these years, but the lease ended last month. The tenants moved out. Well, there you go, he said. You've got a home, and a case, if you wanted one. Financial misuse, elder manipulation? Don't get me started. I don't want revenge, I said. I just want distance, and locks that only I have keys to. He nodded. Then we'll start with that. I'll file the revocation of power of attorney. You still have that trust in Ella's name? Yes. For emergencies. We'll close it, reclaim the funds, reissue the card. You'll need to call the bank. I did. I sat in Walter's office with my cell phone on speaker while the woman from the fraud department confirmed every charge. Grocery delivery, meal kits, subscription boxes. All to my billing address. All made by Ella's email. Would you like to press charges, Ma'am? No, I said. Just freeze the account, permanently. I walked out of Walter's office with a folder under my arm and a strange stillness in my chest. Not grief, not rage, just something solid, like steel. When I got back to their house, Sean was in the backyard, muttering into his headset, pacing in his gym shorts like a suburban peacock. I didn't stop to say hello. I walked straight to my room and closed the door. I began packing. Not everything. Just the things I'd brought. My clothes, my slippers, my books, my wedding ring. I left the tea kettle Ella had gifted me. I never liked the thing anyway. Too loud. That night, I sent a message to the property manager of the apartment. I'm returning. Please schedule a locksmith for tomorrow morning. He replied within the hour. The next morning, while Ella left for yoga and Sean logged into whatever video meeting required AirPods and a protein shake, I wheeled my small suitcase to the front door. I paused. No goodbye. No confrontation. No note. Just a silence they had mistaken for surrender. The taxi was late. I stood on the curb, watching the sunlight spread over the lawn. A neighbor waved. I smiled. Moving out? I nodded. Just moving on? At the apartment, the locksmith met me by the door. A young man, polite, fast. He replaced every lock, handed me new keys in a plastic bag, and said, No one gets in but you now. I stood in the living room once the door clicked shut. The air smelled of dust and possibility. Afternoon light spilled across the floorboards where Paul once danced with me, barefoot, to a scratchy Louis Armstrong record. I exhaled. It didn't feel like a return. It felt like a reclaiming. That evening, I made tea on an old stovetop kettle and sat by the window. My hands trembled a little as I dialed Walter. "It's done," I said. "Good," he replied. "You deserve peace." But peace wasn't what I wanted. Not yet. What I wanted was preparation, because I knew they'd call. And when they did, I wanted everything, to already be out of their reach. The first call came that night. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then came a text from Ella. "Mum, where are you? You didn't say anything. We're worried." I stared at the message for a full minute, then powered the phone off. Not because I was cruel, because I was done being convenient. In the morning, I took the folder Walter had given me and began making copies. The deed, the revocation letter, the bank statements. I labelled each one with care, slipped them into individual envelopes, and set them on the table like chess pieces. Then I walked to the bank. It was a small branch, the kind where they still greet you by name if you come often enough. I hadn't been in years, but the layout was the same. The chairs still squeaked. The coffee still tasted like burnt toast. "I'd like to close the joint trust account," I said to the woman behind the glass, "and remove any auto payments tied to this card." I slid the paperwork through the slot. She looked at the name, then at me. "Are you sure?" "Yes, it's time." She didn't argue. She printed the closure slip, stamped it, and handed it to me with a quiet nod. One more cord cut. After that, I stopped by the small phone store near the market. I bought a new SIM card, a new number. One only Walter, the property manager, and the locksmith had. When the young man asked if I wanted to transfer my old contacts, I shook my head. "No need," I said. "Clean slate." That afternoon, I filled out a change of address form. I wrote neatly, carefully, making sure everything pointed here now, to this apartment, this corner of the world that was mine again. By evening, my hands ached, but my mind was clear. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the open window. The apartment was quiet, but it wasn't lonely. There's a difference. One is emptiness. The other is space. The next message arrived the following morning. "Ella again. I checked your bank login. Did something happen? Are you okay?" So she'd noticed. Finally. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the app I'd downloaded the night before, an account tracker Walter had recommended. I watched as the last shared funds finished transferring into my private savings. Not much, but enough. Enough for rent, for groceries, for freedom. That afternoon, I made one final visit to the notary. The apartment had always been in my name, but I wanted extra insurance. A formal document declaring my daughter and her husband had no claim, no access, no authority. The notary, a woman my age with silver curls and a warm laugh, watched me sign with a quiet kind of respect. "I see this more than you'd think," she said gently, sliding the stamp down. "I wish that surprised me," I replied. When I got home, the answering machine blinked red. I'd kept the landline. Let them talk to a machine instead of me. The message was Sean, of course. His voice was that fake patient tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. "Grace, listen. This has gotten out of hand. We were just using the card for shared stuff. You didn't say anything for months, and now you're gone and freezing accounts and... Come on. Be reasonable. Ella's upset. Just call us." Click. No apology. No ownership. just concern about the money. That night, I wrote a list, not out of spite, but clarity. What I had paid for, what I had quietly covered since moving into their house. Groceries, prescription refills, Ella's car registration, which she'd forgotten and charged to my account. A new blender, monthly streaming services I never used. A smart doorbell they never asked if I wanted. Their anniversary dinner, a steakhouse I hadn't been invited to. The total made me exhale sharply. I folded the paper in half. Not for evidence. For memory. Because if they ever came asking for context, I wanted to be sure I remembered everything they thought I wouldn't notice. That evening, I turned off all the lights, lit a single candle in the kitchen, and sat with my tea. Outside, the city hummed with traffic, life, movement. I'd once feared this stage of life would be full of silence, but now I understood something. Silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything they never thought I'd say out loud. And tomorrow, I would finally say it, not with words, with action. The envelope arrived 2 days later. Thick, cream-coloured, formal. I knew the sender before I read the return address. Walter never did anything halfway. Inside was the final version of the legal statement. Revocation of authority, declaration of sole ownership, confirmation of full financial independence. I signed every page without hesitation. My hand didn't shake once. Then I slipped the copy meant for Ella into a separate envelope. I sealed it, pressed the flap down with the weight of every swallowed insult, every ignored boundary, every quiet meal I'd eaten alone in that house while they laughed in the other room. I took it to the post office myself. That night, I got a voicemail from Ella. "Mom, what's happening? We got this thing in the mail from a lawyer. Sean says it's serious. Are you mad at us? Please call me. I don't understand." No, of course she didn't. She didn't understand the way a voice goes quiet, not because it has nothing left to say, but because it's finally tired of saying it to people who don't listen. The next day, I received a call from the property manager of the apartment. "Hi, Ms. Halpern," he said. "Just letting you know your utilities have been fully reconnected. Internet too. And we got the locksmith's bill. It's already filed under your name." Under my name. How long had it been since something was truly mine? I walked to the window and opened it wide. The breeze carried the scent of cut grass and car exhaust. Nothing poetic, but it was real. Not filtered through air purifiers and rules about scented candles. Just the air, the sky, mine. That afternoon, I bought myself a single lemon tart from the bakery downstairs and ate it on the fire escape like I used to in the 90s, when Paul and I would sit out there after dinner and talk about the neighbours in the windows across the way. They never talked about us. They never would have guessed we were a couple who built their whole life on discipline and the quiet kind of love, the kind that shows up in roof repairs and warm soup on the hard nights. I missed him. But I didn't wish him back into this mess. He'd been spared the final years of being rebranded as a burden. That evening, I received a message from an unknown number, a voice note. It was Sean again. "Grace, look, I don't know what kind of stunt this is, but you've got people worried. Ella's crying, and now we're dealing with lawyers? Over what? A few charges? You're not poor. You never said we couldn't use the card. And now you're cutting us off like some kind of punishment?" He paused. I could hear the irritation tightening his voice. "I mean, come on. You moved in with us. We didn't force you. And if this is about respect or something, fine. We'll say sorry. But this legal stuff? It's dramatic." There it was again. Dramatic. As if standing up for myself was a performance. As if setting boundaries was a show. I didn't reply. I didn't delete the message either. I kept it. Like a receipt. That night, I opened a drawer and pulled out my old notebook, the one I'd used for grocery lists, birthdays, the kind of things you think you'll always remember and then don't. On the back pages, I started a new section. What I gave, what they took, not for revenge, not even for clarity, for truth. Because someday, someone would ask why I left the way I did, why I didn't explain, why I didn't wait for apologies, and I wanted to be able to answer without saying a word. The first entries were simple. 2016, covered Ella's dental surgery. $2,400. 2018, paid off Sean's credit card when he lost his job. $5,000. 2019, helped with down payment on their house. $12,000. 2022, contributed to their IVF fund. $6,500. 2023, monthly groceries via auto charge. $300 on X 7 months. $2,100. I stared at the list. More would come. I hadn't even reached the years when Ella was in college. They called it drama. I called it a lifetime of invisible generosity. And tomorrow, I would visit Walter one more time to take the final step. Not revenge, not retaliation, reclamation. Walter didn't ask questions when I called. He simply said, "Come by at 2. Bring the notebook if you want." So I did. I wore the same coat, tied my scarf just so. There's something about dressing with intention that makes you feel more solid, even if your bones ache a little when you sit too long. His office hadn't changed. Same clunky lamp, same stack of law journals no one read anymore. He poured me tea without asking, just like Paul used to. "I want to transfer the apartment into a protective trust," I said, sliding the notebook across the desk. Walter raised an eyebrow. "Protecting it from who?" I looked at him plainly. "From the people who believe I owe them access." He nodded slowly. "And you want full legal distancing? No power of attorney? No joint authority? No future claims?" "None," I said. "I want it clean." He opened the notebook, scanned a few pages, then looked back up at me. "You documented everything." "No one else was going to." He tapped the table with his pen. "I'll draw up the trust. You'll remain sole beneficiary. I recommend including a clause that prohibits sale or access without your written consent, just in case they ever come knocking with stories." "Do it." He paused, looked at me closely. "Are you sure, Grace? Once it's done, there's no way back." I sipped my tea. "There's nothing back there I want." It took about 20 minutes. While he typed, I looked around the office. Paul had sat in this very chair once, signing documents with a steady hand and a tired smile. "Just in case something happens," he'd said. Back then, I thought it was all a formality. Now I knew better. He'd been planting protections I didn't even know I'd need one day. When the papers were ready, Walter slid them over. I read every line, slow and deliberate. Then I picked up the pen and signed. And just like that, the apartment was wrapped in armor. Not walls, not locks, law. As I stood to leave, Walter said, "You've been remarkably calm about all of this." I turned back to him. Because rage is loud, and they expect loud. But silence, that unsettles people, especially when it's paired with signatures. Back at the apartment, I made myself a proper lunch, not microwave soup, not whatever was left in the fridge after Ella's juice cleanses. A roast beef sandwich with horseradish and a side of kettle chips. I ate slowly, intentionally, because now every bite belonged to a woman who no longer had to apologize for eating. That afternoon, I received another message, this time from Ella. She'd clearly found out about the trust. "Mum, I don't understand what's going on. Why are you acting like we're enemies? We love you. I don't know what Sean said, but this is too far. Please talk to me before you do something permanent." "Too late." I didn't reply. Instead, I folded laundry. Mine, no one else's. No hidden resentment in each wrinkle. No obligation stitched into the towels. Just fabric and hands. Simple. Peaceful. At sunset, I stepped out onto the fire escape with a blanket and my tea. The streetlights flickered on, one by one. A dog barked somewhere below. A couple argued softly in Spanish on the stoop across the street. Life. Regular, messy, beautiful life. And I was in it again. Not a ghost, not a shadow in someone else's hallway. A woman with a name. And now, with a future she owned outright. They'd called it drama. What they didn't understand was that for women like me, drama wasn't yelling or crying or slamming doors. Drama was remembering who we were and doing something about it. The phone stopped ringing for 2 days. No messages, no missed calls, no buzzing in the middle of the night. For a moment, I wondered if they had finally accepted it. Then I laughed at myself. People like Sean don't let go. They calculate their next move. I spent that quiet stretch reclaiming the rhythms of solitude. Mornings with soft jazz and real coffee. Midday walks to the corner market, where the clerk already knew I liked my apples firm and my milk whole. I began rereading an old novel Paul and I once loved, dog-eared and smelling of someone who used to underline passages like prayers. But silence, as I'd learned, doesn't last. On the third morning, the knock came. Not a hard one, no fists. Just that polite little rap that tells you someone's trying to seem calm when they're anything but. I didn't open the door. Instead, I looked through the peephole. Ella. Hair pinned up like she'd come from somewhere official. Pale trench coat. No makeup. A girl trying to look like a woman who had it together. She didn't see me, of course. But she waited. Knocked again. "Mum?" she said softly, her voice close to the wood. "Please, just open the door." I didn't move. "I know you're upset," she continued, her voice wobbling. "But this legal stuff, it's not necessary. We can fix this. You raised me better than to let it get this far." That was rich. She waited 5 more minutes, then slid something under the door. An envelope. Thinner than Walter's. I left it there. Only after I'd finished my tea, done the dishes, and folded a load of laundry did I pick it up. Inside was a handwritten note. "Mum? I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. We were just trying to manage everything. Sean said you were okay with the card. If I was wrong, I'm sorry. But I thought we were helping each other. You helped me through so much when I was younger. I didn't think this would be different. Please talk to me. Please don't do anything that can't be undone." I stared at the paper. The handwriting I'd once praised in elementary school. I remembered buying her that first pen, telling her she had a gift for words. And now, even her apology felt rehearsed. Not once did she say, "It was wrong." Not once. "We took advantage of you." Just, "Please don't do anything that can't be undone." I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with the others, the bank statements, the trust documents, the notebook. Later that day, Walter called. "Ella's lawyer reached out," he said, dry as toast. "Of course she did," I replied. "They're asking questions, polite ones, for now, trying to understand the nature of your financial changes." "Let them ask," I said. "I've already answered. With ink." That night, I wrote a new line in my notebook. 2024. Trust established. Ownership confirmed. Inheritance revoked. The next morning, I received a call from the locksmith again. "Hi, Ms. Halpern," he said. "You asked to be notified if anyone tried to use the old keys. Someone did. This morning." Of course they did. I thanked him, hung up, and exhaled. It wasn't over. Not yet. People like Sean always assume you'll cave, that you'll miss the noise, the family dinners that always came with tension folded into the napkins, that you'll want back in, just for the company. But they forget something. It's not company if you feel alone at the table. And now I wasn't alone. I had myself. And as it turns out, I'm pretty good company. That night, I lit a candle, made lamb stew from memory, and ate slowly, savoring the silence. Not the kind that swallows you, the kind that sets you free. The smell of lamb stew lingered into morning. I left the window open, let the breeze carry it into the hallway. Let the neighbors wonder. Let the air tell a story they didn't know. That somewhere on the third floor, an old woman who used to be quiet had started to live out loud. At noon, Walter called again. "You're going to get another envelope," he said. "Oh?" It's not a threat. More like a probe. They've hired a mediator. Of course they had. They want a discussion to avoid escalation. Their words. I laughed. Did they say what they're hoping to recover? Access, he said. To the trust, or at least partial stake. Maybe a retroactive co-signature. I sat down, notebook in lap, pen in hand. And what did you tell them? That my client isn't interested in a discussion about what she already owns. I nodded. Good. Walter cleared his throat. Grace. They're trying a new tactic. What is it this time? Sean has filed an informal complaint. He's claiming you're mentally unfit. The pen in my hand didn't move, but my jaw tightened. Of course he is, I said. What's the basis? No specifics, just concern. Age, memory, instability. He's hoping to trigger a review. A court might dismiss it, but the stink lingers. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the ceiling. The cracks in the plaster formed a shape like branches, or maybe veins. Then it's time we add something, I said. What's that? A psychiatric evaluation, independent, paid out of pocket. Filed before they can try to smear me. Walter was quiet for a moment. You want to go that far? No, Walter. I have to. You don't give someone like Sean a shadow to play with. He sighed. I'll set it up. That evening, I packed a small overnight bag and booked myself into a wellness clinic just outside the city. Not a hospital. Not a white wall kind of place. A quiet cottage setup where the staff spoke slowly and the windows didn't lock. I stayed 2 days. Talked to a calm woman in soft shoes who asked me to describe how I feel when people assume I've lost value. I answered with a steady voice. I feel like I'm still standing in the room, holding the broom, while they discuss what to do with me as if I'm already gone. She didn't speak for a while after that, just wrote something down. When the evaluation came in, it was 5 pages long, balanced, professional, and conclusive. Cognitively sound, emotionally stable, and entirely capable of managing her own affairs. I made 10 copies. By the time I returned home, the envelope Walter warned about had arrived, cream-coloured again. Stamped private mediation proposal. I didn't even open it, just added it to the folder. Another failed attempt at rewriting my story. But then came something else. A knock at the door. I checked the peephole again. Ella, alone. This time she wasn't dressed like someone who had a meeting. No trench coat, no lip gloss. Just a sweatshirt and a face that had been crying for a while. I opened the door. Not wide, just enough. She looked up at me. Can I come in? She asked. I shook my head. No. She nodded slowly. Okay? She stayed there, not speaking. Then quietly. I didn't know about the complaint. Sean didn't tell me. I said nothing. He said it was just paperwork, that you'd overreacted. I didn't realize he was... She trailed off. Lying? I offered. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. Yeah. More silence. I don't know what to say, she added. Then don't say anything, I said softly. Just listen. I stepped outside, let the door click shut behind me. We stood in the hallway, two women with the same eyes and different hearts. I raised you to be kind, I said. Not obedient, not silent, kind. I know. You let him speak for both of you, and now I'm supposed to believe the tears are just yours. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I don't need a daughter who begs forgiveness when she's caught, I continued. I need a daughter who doesn't disappear when I'm being disrespected. I'm sorry, she whispered. I believe you, I said. But that doesn't mean I let you back in. Then I turned, walked inside, and closed the door behind me, not in anger, just in certainty. That was the first time I realized forgiveness and boundaries could live in the same room, and that I was finally living in mine. The next morning, I made pancakes, not because it was Sunday or because anyone was visiting, just because I felt like it. I added a little nutmeg, the way Paul used to like, and sat at the table in my robe, the window open, the city humming its early rhythm. I hadn't done that in years, cooked for no one but myself. Halfway through the second pancake, the intercom buzzed. I stood slowly, wiped my hands, checked the monitor. Sean. Of course. I didn't answer. He buzzed again, then a knock, then another. Sharp, measured, like he practiced it in the mirror. Then came the voice. Cool, controlled, coated in fake civility. Grace, I'm not here to fight. Of course not. I just think we've let this spiral. I'm here in good faith. I know things got twisted. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He paused. You've made your point, and I respect it. I do. But the trust, the revocation, the public record, it's a bit harsh. It's affecting our mortgage options. There it was. Not grief, not apology, just consequence. You're a smart woman, he continued. You know how these things look on paper. If we apply for refinancing and your name's on all the records, it complicates things. I almost laughed. He wasn't here for family. He was here for leverage. I didn't open the door. I didn't speak. Eventually, he stopped knocking. I returned to my pancakes. Later that day, Walter emailed. He's officially filed a petition for reconsideration of the trust, wants to argue coercion. Coercion. I replied. Attach the psychiatric report and my handwritten timeline. Let the court compare his credit history to my grocery receipts. Let's see who looks unstable. That night, I watched an old documentary about aging in America. One segment showed a woman in her 70s living in her son's basement, a mattress on the floor, a single lamp. She said she was grateful. I turned the TV off. No, I wasn't grateful for being tolerated. I was proud for having left. The next morning, a neighbor stopped me in the hallway. A woman in her 50s, hair pulled back, hands full of grocery bags. You're Grace, right? She asked. I nodded. I just wanted to say, whatever you're doing up there, it smells amazing, like real food, not protein shakes and kale. I smiled. Lamb stew? And this morning, pancakes. She laughed. My mother used to make those. I should try again. I nodded. You should. It was a short moment, a small exchange, but something in it stayed with me all afternoon. We are not just what they reduce us to. We are not burdens or background furniture. We are stories, stitched into recipes, into hallway greetings, into the way we fold towels without being asked. That evening, I set the table for one again. Cloth napkin, ceramic plate, wine glass. Not because I had wine, but because it made the table feel full. And I thought, maybe I'll have someone over next week, someone who doesn't want my money or my silence. Maybe I'll start a supper club. Call it Too Much Drama. Everyone brings their best dish, and the one story no one ever let them finish telling. And we listen, all the way to the end. The supper club idea stayed with me like a melody I couldn't shake. I wrote it down on a sticky note and placed it on the fridge. Too Much Drama. Thursdays, Huff Talk 6. BEO Truth. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. But naming it, just the act of putting words on the wall, felt like a declaration of existence, of permission. Meanwhile, the papers kept coming. Walter forwarded a copy of Sean's petition. It was laughable, if it weren't so calculated. Claims that I'd acted irrationally, that I'd been emotionally volatile following my injury, that I'd been unduly influenced by an unnamed third party. He meant Walter, of course. He even included screenshots of text messages I hadn't seen, ones he'd sent Ella, painting me as fragile and possibly depressed. I printed them, read each line slowly. Then I wrote my own statement, not for court, for memory. Things they didn't say when I was paying their rent. Are you emotionally stable enough to co-sign this? Is your grief impairing your decision-making? Do you feel too fragile to contribute $5,000 to our IVF fund? No. Back then, I was clear-headed, wise, generous. Now that I had set a boundary, suddenly I was unfit. I mailed my counter-affidavit the next morning, but I didn't stop there. I went online, first time in a while, and found a community group for women over 60, local. They met once a month at a library 3 blocks from me. The group's tagline made me smile. We are not invisible. We are just done whispering. I marked the next meeting on my calendar. At home, I rearranged the living room, moved the armchair by the window, hung a photo of Paul, not the one from the wedding, but the one where he's laughing, flour on his nose, stirring something in the kitchen. My favourite version of him. I lit a candle. Rosemary. Familiar. Forgiving. Then I finally opened the envelope Ella had slid under my door. It wasn't long. Just a card. The front read, Thinking of you. Inside, her handwriting was smaller than usual. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I see now that silence is just as loud. If I could go back, I would have said something every time he rolled his eyes, every time he made you smaller. But I didn't. I was scared of choosing sides, and by not choosing, I chose him. I know that now. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to say that much, at least. It was better than before, but still missing something. Remorse is not the same as repair. I placed the card beside the others, not out of malice, out of record-keeping. I had learned that some women keep journals, and some, like me, build ledgers of silence endured. That night, I took a walk. Just a few blocks. Light traffic, summer air warm on my shoulders. I passed couples, dogs, laughter from a bar patio. And then, a woman about my age, seated alone at a cafe table reading. She looked up. Our eyes met. We nodded at each other. I wanted to sit beside her and ask, how long did they ignore you before you stopped trying to be heard? But instead, I walked on. Sometimes acknowledgement is enough. Back at home, the voicemail light blinked again. I pressed play. It was Sean. Grace, look, this isn't working. You're punishing us. And for what? For trying to make things easier? Ella's a wreck. I'm doing my best here. But if you don't call off this trust thing, it's going to get ugly. You think this ends with a piece of paper? There it was. Finally, the mask slipped. No performance, no pretense. Just the threat, naked and sharp. I deleted the message and added a new line to my notebook. July 15th. He showed me who he really is. I believed him this time. Tomorrow, I would visit the library group, and if it felt right, I'd say something. Not because I needed support, but because someone else in that room might. The library smelled the way good libraries should, like paper and glue and the soft dust of memory. I hadn't stepped into one in years, not since Paul passed, not since Ella boxed up my volunteering pins and said, "You need to rest more." But here, among the shelves, I felt like I'd slipped back into a version of myself I didn't even realize I'd left behind. The community room was modest. 12 chairs, a pitcher of water, a tray of shortbread cookies someone had bothered to bring from home. Most of the women were already seated when I arrived, some knitting, some flipping through notebooks. No one looked up at once. But one woman, tall, regal posture, silver braid down her back, nodded gently. I sat near the window. They went around the room, each woman introducing herself with just a name and one sentence. "I'm Loretta. I stopped being nice after 65. I'm Angela. My daughter hasn't called in 3 years. I'm Mina. They said I was too sensitive. Now they miss my attention." When it was my turn, I said, "Grace, I was called dramatic for asking where my money went." They all looked up then, not with pity, with recognition. Later, during tea, Loretta sat beside me. "You've got the stillness of someone who's already done the hard part," she said. I thought I did, until the backlash started. "They always backlash," she said, "especially when they lose their free ride." We talked about daughters who forgot, sons who changed, husbands who died too early or stayed too long. None of it was a complaint. It was memory unspooling itself in a room finally quiet enough to be heard. Before I left, someone handed me a flyer, a new initiative, small gatherings for women to share stories, not therapy, not self-help, just dinner tables where no one interrupts. I smiled. I knew the perfect name. Back at home, I called Walter. "Let's finalize everything," I said. "No more loose threads." "Already ahead of you," he replied. "The court rejected Sean's petition. They didn't even bother to schedule a hearing." I exhaled. "Thank you." "Oh, and you'll be pleased to know, his lawyer dropped him. Professional boundaries, apparently." That night, I pulled out the spare keys I'd once made for Ella. I put them in a small envelope, walked to the corner mailbox, and sent them back. No note. Just a title on the return address, G. Halpin, sole owner. The next day, I started rearranging the second bedroom. I hadn't stepped into it much since moving back. The old tenant had left it empty. I swept, aired out the linens, dusted the window ledge. By afternoon, I had a thought. A supper club needs a space, and a spare room is just wasted warmth without company. I made a list. Folding chairs, a bigger table, cloth napkins, a name tag basket, a sign for the door, "Too much drama. Thursdays, come hungry, leave full." As I folded the sheets, I thought of how Ella used to fold hers, tight and sharp, as if preparing for inspection. Mine were looser, softer. They felt like something someone could rest in. When I finished, I sat on the edge of the bed, notebook in my lap. I added a line. July 17th. Room prepared. Not for guests who take, for guests who carry stories. Then I closed the notebook, poured a glass of lemonade, and sat by the window. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. If it was important, it would leave a message. And if it didn't, well, that said enough. It came by courier, not mail. A thick manila envelope, signature required. The man handing it over didn't look me in the eye. He probably didn't want to know what was inside. I signed, thanked him, and waited until the door clicked shut before setting it on the kitchen table. I made tea first. Mint. Always mint now. Then I opened it. Inside was a letter from Ella, not handwritten, typed, 4 pages long, carefully worded, almost formal. I read it slowly. The first paragraph was about misunderstandings, the second about confusion around shared expenses. Then came the real heart of it. We never intended harm, but recent decisions have created financial consequences we're struggling to manage. We're asking, humbly, for reconsideration. There it was, the real message, beneath all the polish. They were drowning, and they wanted me to throw a rope made of guilt and second chances. I turned the page. Ella asked if I would consider reopening the trust, or allowing temporary co-use of the apartment, while they regrouped. She mentioned the child they were trying to adopt, the stress it was causing. No mention of what I'd already endured. No apology for the complaint Sean had filed. No real admission of wrong. Just need. Just pressure. Just another version of, "You're the mother. Fix it." I folded the letter once, then again, placed it in a drawer, not the important one, just a drawer for junk I might someday throw away. Then I opened my notebook. July 18th. They asked again. I didn't say no out of anger. I said no out of memory. The phone rang an hour later. A new number. I let it go to voicemail. This time it was Ella. Her voice was tired, smaller than I remembered. "Mum," she said, "I know it's late to say this, but I'm sorry. For everything. I let him lead. I didn't protect you. I let money decide who I was, and now I don't know how to undo it." There was a long pause. "I miss you. Not the convenience. You. I miss the way you smell like peppermint when you knit. I miss the way you always notice when someone's had a hard day and doesn't say it. I miss how you made everything feel warmer." Another pause. "If you never call back, I understand. But I wanted to say it, at least once." Click. I stood by the phone for a long while, not crying, just listening to the silence she left behind. Then I walked into the spare room. I opened the window, let the air in. The sheet on the bed lifted gently in the breeze. And I whispered, more to the walls than to myself, "It's not that I don't love her. It's that I finally love myself more." Later that day, I hosted the first supper. Only 4 women came. Loretta brought lemon bars. Mina made stew. One brought nothing but a story she'd never told, not even to her sister. We ate by candlelight. No one interrupted. At the end, I passed around the name tag basket. Each tag had a blank line under our names. "What's this?" one woman asked. "Write what they used to call you," I said. "Then cross it out." Mine read, "Grace too much drama, just enough." The room fell quiet. Then someone laughed. A low, deep, grateful kind of laugh. And that's when I knew. They'd lost a mother, but I'd found something better. A table where I was finally welcome. By the second Thursday, the table was full. 8 women, 3 folding chairs borrowed from neighbours, and a casserole that tasted like memory. Someone brought wine. Someone else brought grief. Both were passed around without apology. We didn't talk about our children, not at first. We talked about things we used to love before we became shadows in our own kitchens, dancing barefoot, collecting postcards, singing hymns while folding laundry. Loretta confessed she used to write poems she never showed anyone. Mina admitted she once wanted to be a painter. We weren't just reclaiming stories. We were restoring outlines. I didn't tell them everything, not yet. But I told them about the word, Drama. How it had been used not to describe chaos, but to erase my dignity. How a man who'd never loved me called me too much because I had finally said, enough. Someone reached across the table and touched my hand. I was too much too, she whispered. Too opinionated, too present, too awake. We all nodded. That night, after everyone left, I sat in the quiet and thought, this is what healing sounds like. Forks clinking gently against ceramic, voices overlapping without competition, chairs scooting close instead of away. Then the phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Again, Ella. Mum, I think Sean's leaving. He said he can't handle this level of drama. Can you believe that? I could, she went on. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. He drained our joint account. He said if I'd played along, none of this would have happened. And now I'm sitting in an empty house wondering if I ruined everything. She paused. Maybe you were right. Maybe I did disappear. Maybe I made silence a habit. Another pause. I wish I knew how to come back. Click. I didn't cry, but I did feel something shift in the air. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. I poured myself a glass of water, walked into the spare room, and opened the closet. Inside was a small box I hadn't touched in years. Inside that, a photo of Ella at 8 years old, standing in front of the school science fair. She'd made a volcano out of flour and vinegar and stayed up the night before, too nervous to sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, the photo in my lap. She'd needed me then, and now, maybe she needed me again. But not as a savior, as a mirror. Someone to say, you are not lost, but you have to walk back on your own feet. The next morning, I replied to her message, not with a phone call, not with money, with a letter. Ella, I heard your message. I believe you're scared. I was too. But fear doesn't undo harm, and apologies, though welcome, don't rebuild trust. That takes action, repetition, time. I will not rescue you. I will not open my doors to the same story in a different disguise. But if you're willing to do the work, slowly, without shortcuts, you may find your way to a new one. Until then, take care. Mum, I didn't sign it with love, but I folded it neatly. I mailed it that afternoon, walking slowly, as if each step untangled one more knot in my chest. When I got home, I placed the lemon tart order for next Thursday. Too much drama was becoming a habit, and for the first time in a long time, I liked the sound of my name being called from across the table. Not Mom, just Grace. And it was enough. The letter must have arrived by Saturday, because Sunday afternoon, the door buzzer rang again. This time, I didn't need to check the camera. I knew it was her. There was a rhythm to her knocks. Gentle, uncertain, like she was still asking for permission in a house where she no longer had keys. I let it buzz, then stopped it. Not to answer. Just to stop the noise. No message came that day. But Monday morning, there was a knock at the downstairs door, followed by the sound of quiet feet retreating. When I opened the building entrance later, there was a small paper bag on the stoop. Inside, a lemon tart, one I hadn't ordered. No note, just the dessert. I brought it upstairs, set it on a plate, and stared at it for a long while. I didn't eat it. Not yet. Not out of pride, but because I was still deciding what it meant. That night, I called Walter. Tell me the truth, I said. Legally, if I wanted to reopen communication, without risking ownership, without losing what I've built. Can I? You mean, let her back in? No, I said. I mean, let her speak, without letting her stay. He chuckled. Of course. Talking isn't title transfer. You're allowed compassion, Grace. You're just not obligated. That was all I needed. The next Thursday, supper club had 10 women. One brought a guitar, another read a poem. I made stew. Mina brought garlic bread so good it made someone cry. Before the food cooled, I raised my glass. To being too much, I said, and finally being full. They laughed. We clinked glasses. That night, after everyone left and the dishes were done, I unwrapped the lemon tart. It was a little soft around the edges, like it had waited long enough. I ate it slowly, thought of Ella's hands folding the paper bag, her mind choosing the bakery I liked. The years she hadn't noticed I preferred lemon to chocolate. It didn't undo anything, but it reminded me that people change sometimes. Later that evening, I sent a single text. Thank you for the tart. It was just right. No emojis, no follow-up. She didn't reply that night, but in the morning, a knock came again. No insistence, no voice calling out, just a quiet knock. And when I opened the door this time, I found her sitting on the hallway bench, hands folded in her lap. She stood as I stepped out. I won't stay, she said. I need to say something out loud. I nodded. She took a breath. I confused your quiet with surrender. I thought you were tired. I didn't see that you were deciding. She looked down at her shoes. And I let someone shrink you in your own life, because it made my life easier. The words hung there. I don't know how to be better, she added, but I want to learn. I didn't step forward. I didn't touch her arm. But I said simply, then start with this. Never mistake my silence for absence again. She nodded, eyes wet, lips tight. I won't, she whispered. Then she turned and walked down the stairs. And I didn't ask her to stop, because healing isn't a reunion. It's a redefinition. And I wasn't her lifeline anymore. I was the example. The next Thursday, I lit 2 extra candles, not because I expected more guests, though word was spreading, but because the light felt earned now, like something I'd fought my way back to. The supper table had grown. So had the stories. We didn't whisper them anymore. We spoke like women who'd finally stopped asking for permission. Ella didn't come, she didn't call, but that was okay. Some doors stay closed, some rebuild slowly, some stay open, but only from one side. The week before, a woman named Jo joined us. 62, recently divorced after 40 years. She brought bread pudding and silence, didn't speak until dessert, then said, I didn't know how alone I was until I sat at a table where people looked me in the eye. I knew what she meant. I knew exactly what she meant. That night, after everyone left, I sat with my notebook. The final page. What I learned. They will take what you do not name. Love without boundaries is not love. It is erosion. Sometimes your own children will disappoint you. That is not your shame. Sometimes you will disappoint yourself. That is not the end. You can rebuild, not everything, but enough. Enough to eat by candlelight and taste your own name in your mouth again. I closed the notebook, slid it onto the shelf between my cookbooks and Paul's old repair manual. Then I walked to the window, looked out over the street. Somewhere down there, people were arguing, laughing, leaving porch lights on. The city had kept turning without me. But now, I was back in it, not in hiding, not in exile, present. A few days later, a neighbor knocked on my door, young, nervous. I heard about your Thursdays, she said. My aunt's been real down. Would it be weird if I brought her? Not weird at all, I said. Bring her hungry. She smiled, and I realized this wasn't just for us anymore. This was for every woman who'd ever been called too much, too loud, too emotional, too dramatic, for simply saying, "Don't use me. Don't speak for me. Don't forget I exist." So if you're reading this and you've ever swallowed the thing you needed to say because someone rolled their eyes or called you difficult or said, "You're lucky we even let you stay," you're not too much. You're just enough. And if no one's made space for your story, come sit at my table. We've saved you a seat. If this story echoed something inside you, share it. Save it. Pass it to the women who stayed quiet too long. Let's rebuild louder, together.